Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Josh McCuistion in Scoop HQ in Houston. And a lot has gone on since we last visited after the instant reaction on on Friday. The Zack Alley news, obviously, a shock, a surprise, another low point is what I would consider for Oklahoma. But we'll get plenty into the game. Obviously, this is the Gameday Rewind, catching up on everything after the 21-20 loss to Navy in the Armed Forces Bowl. But first things first, gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon. How are we? Zack Alley, what the hell? Where do we stand on this? Certainly a shocking news to come out on Saturday afternoon. Zack Alley headed to West Virginia. He's leaving Oklahoma after less than a year in Norman. And I know that we all three sounded off on it on the Unofficial 40, which we recorded today on Monday. You can listen to that here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. But Josh, we'll throw it to you to begin. Certainly surprising news, and it seems like it's just kind of another nail in a coffin that is the OU football season in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, why not end it in the most kind of unbelievable and horrific fashion? It fits the entire season. I mean, that's just really what this is. But guys, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, George, you talked about this in the Unofficial 40 and some other stories we've written. We all knew that this was something West Virginia was pursuing. I didn't take it seriously. I'm not going to pretend I did. There's not a world where I can get to where West Virginia comes and takes coaches to on equal footing. You might take a position coach and make him a coordinator. Sure, that happens. But to just make a level move, man, that's really hard to wrap your head around. I know a lot of people have talked about it. I know everybody's turning this into, it's because, he sees the ship burning in Oklahoma. I don't buy that. I think if he comes and has a great, year, another good defense in Oklahoma where we know he's still going to have plenty of talent, there's still going to be a good group, there's a good core, a good defensive line to return to, there's a lot that you can like. I think he would have more opportunities next year at Oklahoma and better opportunities than West Virginia. So, it's just one of those things where I think this has to be about a guy wanting to run what he wants to run.
100%, Josh, and I think it has to do with him wanting to run whatever scheme he wants to run, and I think and we talked a lot about it on the Unofficial 40, but I think Brent is a tough person to work for, and when you look at that defensive coordinator job, I think that when things went south this year, that Brent got really involved in what they were doing defensively, and we knew that he was going to be involved no matter what, but I think it reached a point to where, is it Brent's defense or is it Zack Alley's defense? And I think Zack Alley viewed it as, I can go to West Virginia, make probably not as good as money as what we understand he was offered to stay at Oklahoma, but be able to do what he wants to do for a guy that he knows in Rich Rod. I think it tells us a lot about kind of what's going on in the program right now. I don't think it's so much about, oh man, you just lost your defensive coordinator. I think we all agree, you can still be very good defensively next year. I mean, Brent Venables is still a great defensive mind, and if they hire from within or if they go out and get somebody, I still have faith that they'll be able to figure it out. And that's not to take anything away from Zack Alley. I think he did a great job this year, but it's more so of what's going on behind closed doors that would make someone like Zack Alley, who's very close with Brent Venables in a lot of ways, almost like a son, his mentee. Why all of a sudden would he leave? It just doesn't. I think
it's an optics thing, right? Yeah. And I know that there's a lot more that goes into it. Certainly doesn't seem that that's something that Zack Alley would make that move, and he wouldn't make that move if he knew that the optics thing was there, right? It seems like it was kind of like the icing on the cake for what has been a shit season in Norman. Brent Venables obviously coming back for his fourth year as we expect. Right now, I think that we can move forward with that idea that he's going to be back. That kind of brings up the next question of where Oklahoma goes now with the defense coordinator position that they're having to fill yet again after bringing in Zack Alley a year ago. Is it as easy to say that Brandon Hall's kind of the lead candidate right now, the current Oklahoma safeties coach, that I know that we've talked very glowingly about here on the program before?
100%. I would say that he's maybe the front runner for the job. We'll see if that's how it ends up playing out. And I think he'd be a good hire. I mean, obviously he's very close with Brent. He would run what Brent wants to run, and it would still kind of be Brent's show, though. And then, what do you do at linebackers coach? Do you bring in somebody from the outside, or do you hire James Skalski, who's been a GA now the last couple years for Oklahoma and obviously knows what they want to do at linebacker, played the position for Brent at Clemson, would make a lot of sense if that's the direction they go. There's been a lot of talk about Wes Godwin, the coordinator at Clemson currently. Sounds like he's on the outs at Clemson, like he's going to be let go. Would Oklahoma bring him as a co-DC with Brandon Hall and he can coach the linebackers? We'll see. I don't know. Right now I get the sense that it will probably end up being Brandon Hall if he wants it. I don't know that for sure. So we'll have to see it kind of play out. This won't be like the offensive coordinator search though, where it's like this big search to find this person and it takes maybe some time. I don't think they're in a huge rush. I don't, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. I don't know, Josh, what would you think of Brandon Hall as somebody that they would maybe promote?
I think it makes all the sense in the world because we know to his core, Brandon Hall's a Brent Venables guy. Like he's going to do what Brent wants to do. He's going to run the defense the way he wants to. And guys, it's not just like, oh, he's going to do this because they see it similarly. I mean, Brandon has spent, we can talk about the connections with Zack Alley and they spent 4 or 5 years together. Brandon Hall has been running Brent Venables' schemes for 25 years. Like, I mean, there's a lot of connection there dating back to, when Brandon Hall was a GA at Oklahoma, in the early 2000s. So there's a lot that makes a lot of sense there. As a linebackers coach, again, like the Godwin guy, he comes in. And guys, I mean, you talk about some brain trust where you're going to bounce some stuff off of each other because I know. I think we all, it's clear from what's transpired in the last 48 hours. This is Brent's show. He wants to run the defense the way he wants to run it. And when you're coaching for your job, I get it. I can understand what the thinking is, like, especially when you have the ability that Brent Venables knows he has. I mean, there's few guys in the country that can run a defense like he can. So, I understand the thinking. But you do want to have people you can bounce ideas off of and work with. And you talk about Brandon Hall, who's been a defensive coordinator. He's been a play caller. You bring in Wes Godwin from Clemson to coach your linebackers. That's another guy, really sharp guy. I know, dating back, for those that don't know, it was my understanding that's who Brent wanted to hire when he hired Ted Roof. He wanted Wes Goodwin to be his first defensive coordinator. I keep saying Godwin really wanted him to be his defensive coordinator. And is it Goodwin?
Yeah, I screwed it up earlier. It's Goodwin.
Okay, I'm having a moment. So yeah, old guy, old head stuff here. But what I will say is, you get that kind of guy there that Brent clearly has a respect for. He has because I know talking to some people around Clemson that when that was going down, there was like, oh no, he's going to be the next guy. There was a lot of belief in him beyond Brent. Dabo, the whole crew. So I think having a guy that has some credibility and having 3 guys on your staff that have served as defensive coordinators, they know this scheme, they know this defense. I could see where that works out really well, and that defense just kind of keeps on trucking.
Is it concerning as we go into the Brent's 4th year that, I think the conversation that we were having a year ago at this time was, all right, Zack Alley's going to come in. Brent wants to take a little bit more of a hands-off CEO approach, right? It certainly doesn't seem like that worked very well, right? No. Or can he just not keep his hands off?
I think, look, it's hard because we haven't seen him be that CEO. I just don't think that it's never going to happen if it hasn't happened yet. I don't like speaking in what is it? Where absolutes because you just I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
But I think that this season also went off the rails so quickly that Brent felt like he had to get involved, and it got to the point where not just defensively.
I guess in a way, I would rather it be that way than a coach that goes, well, we tried to hire somebody, it didn't work.
And I think that to start the year, it almost is like he did that with Seth Luttrell, right? It got to a point where his hand was forced because it was like he was letting Seth kind of do everything, and then it was I don't know. It's been a mess, so it's like it's hard to say, but sure. I think you're exactly right, and I think it's 100% concerning. All of this is concerning. The alarm bells have gone off inside the Oklahoma football program, especially when you lose somebody like a Zack Alley who's supposed to be the right-hand man to Brent. Like it's massively concerning, and especially considering that the number that I've heard around $1.3 million somewhere in there for Zack to stay for him to leave, I don't know what West Virginia's paying him. I'm guessing it's not that much.
At the end of the day, it certainly feels like, without really hearing it from Zack himself, he doesn't want to coach with Brent. That's how it seems.
I would say that's a good way of putting it in a short, brief way.
I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. It definitely sucks for Oklahoma as they enter what is going to be something that we said is probably the most pivotal 12 to 14 months of OU athletics in the recent modern history, as much as football means around here. Certainly going to have to kind of rebound off of what was another 6-7 season. That came to conclusion on Friday down in Fort Worth. I don't know. Do we want to get into the game now, or do you guys have any other thoughts on just the kind of the overall structure of this thing as we enter what is going to be a massive offseason?
I think that the only thing I'll say, and we got into a lot of this on the unofficial 40,
Sure.
and I'll kick it to you here in a second, Josh, but I would say that it's very possible that Zack Alley is not the only staff change Oklahoma has.
Okay.
And I say that I think that there could be changes on the defensive side. I think that especially Jay Valai is somebody that we've kind of heard maybe is looking around. And then offensive side, I still wouldn't rule out Joe John Finley and DeMarco Murray maybe looking elsewhere. Brent said after the game, Kerry asked him, would you reevaluate your staff? And he basically said yes after the game. So I would just be aware that this isn't the only maybe staff departure Oklahoma has.
No doubt. Now, the good news is, real quick.
Josh.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Come on, Eddie. Come
I, I was just going to say briefly, for the people that will, I think there's this need to make it like an ugly thing between Alley and Brent, and it may have been. That's not my general impression. But what I will say is I think the thing you have to remember is in Alley's time away from Brent, you saw him move to a real 3-3-5, kind of the Iowa State scheme. I don't think that's what Brent envisions for Oklahoma. I think he wants that to be a part, something they can kind of throw. The Tennessee game being the perfect example, something they can throw at the right team, but not this is the base of our defense. This is what we do all the time. And frankly, I think that's the right decision. We talked about it on the unofficial 40, so I won't go into all of it again. But I do think that is the correct determination, especially like we were talking about before we got started, George. When you have a recruiter and a coach like Todd Bates on your defensive line, you are going to have defensive line talent. So if you can do that, I think a 4-down front's a much better use of it, especially in the SEC, because that 3-down front, it's just hard to get really quality guys that want to play in that scheme because you're just catching. That's all you're doing all the time. You're eating up blockers. You're trying to let your linebackers and your secondary flow to the football. Like that's the entire principle up front, and that's not sexy for a defensive lineman. They want to get upfield. They want to be R. Mason Thomas. They want to be Grayson Halton. They want to be making plays behind the line of scrimmage that, frankly, NFL scouts are going to notice.
Speaking of, Oklahoma did get news on Monday night. There has been some good news on the Oklahoma football front. Dominic Williams announces on Monday evening that he'll be coming back to school in 2025. Certainly good news in terms of a defensive line that, and we were talking about it before we started recording the program today, seems like it's a pretty good group up front.
Yeah, I'm looking at the snap counts too here because I was just writing about it. But getting Dominic Williams back is huge. His experience and look, you look at his stats and they may not pop in terms of defensive tackle stats, but 36 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, which is kind of what you want though from like your kind of true nose tackle type guy. But he played 416 snaps. That's the most of any defensive tackle this season for Oklahoma. Grayson Halton right behind him at 403. So you have both of your two top guys back in terms of snap counts, plus Jaden Jackson, who we all know had a phenomenal freshman season.
Basically a consensus freshman All-American.
Yeah, David Stone, who played quite a bit in the bowl game.
Sure.
And we all anticipate continuing to get better. That's a good foursome to have back next year. And I think they still maybe want to add one more piece there in terms of an experienced guy. So obviously big news to get him back. And you look at that defense, you got a lot of really quality players coming back.
No doubt about it. As you see the defense here, and Oklahoma, they lose on Friday in the Armed Forces Bowl, 21-20. Let's just start here, Josh, and kind of a review and a rewind of the game. Defensively, didn't think they just played terribly. It was another one of those performances that you look up and you go, yeah, they probably played well enough. Had the big play, the 95-yarder to Blake Horvath, who had an exceptional afternoon. But just kind of overall defensively, Josh, what did you think of the performance in the bowl game on Friday?
It is a really awkward game to grade because on one hand, I thought snap to snap, they were really good. They shut down Navy's run game almost completely. They were very dominant. Their problem was big plays, 2 or 3 of them. But at the same time, you can say, okay, well, they got because Navy has a lot of motion. They make you look at a lot of stuff. And okay, you can understand that. At the same time, Navy let them off the hook on multiple occasions. There's the deep ball early in the game where if Horvath puts it on the guy, that's a touchdown. There's another one, there was a 4th down conversion or a 4th down attempt. They went for it deep in Oklahoma territory, and he just misses the receiver. They would have converted easily. So it's a tough one to grade because in some ways it could have been worse. And in some ways you're like, well, Navy, like on the long touchdown run, you just have a linebacker get out of alignment. You've got a young safety behind him that doesn't clean the alley up. Like there's just these things that I don't think happen in a regular season game because you've got guys that have been playing and that are they're ready to go. As to where this situation, you had like I said, in that particular case on Horvath's big run, you had Jaron Kanik and you had Michael Boganowski deep. Those are guys that haven't played a lot of snaps at those positions. So I think there was some just, trying to make a play, trying to do a lot, and guys got out of position, and Horvath's a talented guy. So it's a tough game to grade, but I don't think you could come out of that game being like, oh, the defense was a real problem here.
Yeah, and it seems like the story of the season where you walk out of there saying defense played well enough to win the game, right? Yeah. And you'd like for them to create a turnover. Kind of hard with Navy because of the way they play. Like they don't throw, they obviously don't throw the ball a ton. Obviously very physical. They don't fumble a ton, I don't think either. So I thought the defense played well. They definitely, you can't give up the big explosive plays. And I think part of that's like Josh said, guys trying to make a play and guys that are in the game that, and look, you can criticize the coaching staff for that. I also think it's a bowl game and they were trying to get some guys some time. And at that time, I don't think they thought that, Jaron Kanik and Michael Boganowski were about to give up a 95-yard touchdown run. Sure. So even my boy Owen Heineke got in the game a little bit. He also was in the game when they scored a touchdown. So we won't talk about that though. But I thought the defense played well. I thought the defensive line, Jaden Jackson, I thought was especially very good. Kip Lewis had some really good moments. I thought Kobe McKenzie did a good job kind of leading that group. I thought Peyton Bowen came up and made some nice tackles at times in the game. So I feel good. Again, losing Zack Alley sucks.
Jacoby Johnson quietly had a nice game as well.
Jacoby Johnson did play well. I feel good about that corner spot. I still think they want to add, a guy there in the portal. But I still feel good. I feel good about this defense moving forward if they can continue to keep all these guys, especially up front. If you can keep, like we just said, Dominic Williams and those guys in the middle, but get an R. Mason Thomas back, which we're still waiting to see what he's going to decide to do. But I feel good about that front.
Josh, kind of connecting the Zack Alley stuff, and then also had the portal entry of Lewis Carter. How surprising was that to you? And just in terms of, kind of what they thought he was going to be moving into 2025, how do they try to fill that linebacker role?
Yeah, guys, you look at the last couple of years, Oklahoma's been very light. They don't have, they've got Marcus James in the current incoming freshman class. The year before was James Nesta from North Carolina, and the year before that was Taylor Heim. So they've been very light signing linebackers after a couple of years of signing a lot of them, where you had, the Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie class, then you had Sammy Omasigo. So you've had some time, but it's kind of interesting to see how they're going to make this work, because now with the loss of Lewis Carter, a guy that they were expecting to lean on next year, and obviously the graduation of Danny Stutzman, there's snaps there to be had, guys. Kobe, I think we all expect Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis to take up the lion's share, and obviously Sammy Omasigo to work his way in there as well. But as much as they like to rotate linebackers, they're going to have to find some guys who can take some snaps and are guys they can trust. Now, maybe Taylor Heim's coming along, as a guy that we knew was really talented out of Bethany, but we knew had a long way to go physically and kind of changing his body. So I don't think that's the answer. I think they'll have to find somebody in the portal, but it's a surprise loss, guys. They had to be expecting Lewis Carter to hang around. And I think it's interesting because that's a guy that Brent Venables had his hands all over Lewis Carter's recruitment, going way back. That was always a guy he was incredibly gung-ho about. And Zack Alley is a guy that spent a year with him. Like that's kind of interesting how that's played out.
If I remember correctly, wasn't it Brent that said he was the best, maybe the most underrated player coming out of the state of Florida? I think he said that on signing day when Lewis Carter signed with Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Like Samuel Masigo, do you move him inside? Does he keep playing cheetah? I would still keep an eye out on Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma State. He hasn't landed anywhere in the portal.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, I wonder if Oklahoma
certainly
maybe
a need.
Yeah, and he could play that kind of hybrid linebacker safety, cheetah spot for him. So maybe he's somebody they're interested in.
No doubt about it. All right, I want to talk to you about the offense, obviously, Josh. But first, let's get into telling you about William and Lauren, the official custom clothier of OU football. William and Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William and Lauren in Oklahoma City or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as OU football. Been pleased to have William and Lauren with us all summer. Maybe you're going to be getting a tux from them for the wedding here.
I honestly, probably will end up getting a tux from them. So
I think they could
hit them up.
you. And they have the one in Oklahoma City as well as I believe they're building a brick and mortar up in T-Town, up in Tulsa, up in your neck of the woods. We also would like to tell you about it's a Monday. We got a bunch of football coming up over the next couple days. Obviously, people are going to be probably around the TV to watch the college football playoff, as well as some of the NFL stuff as we head into Week 18, the final week of the regular season. But let's get some prize picks as well, Mr. George. Play $5, get $50 instantly. All you got to do is use the promo code SoonerScoop. As you see there on the screen, all you got to do is download the Prize Pick app or go to the website. Very simple, very easy to navigate. $5, get $50 instantly with the promo code SoonerScoop. Where are we going?
I am going to Notre Dame.
Okay.
Kicker Mitch Jeter.
Wednesday night.
Yep. 5.5 kicking points over.
Okay.
Over 5.5 kicking points. And then I'm taking Penn State tight end Tyler Warren over 6.5 receptions. He's a big part of their offense.
I like that.
He'll be involved.
I'm going to go Cam Scatabo over 25.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
Maybe a little something into the flare, into the boundary or something. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. And then I'm going to go Dylan Gabriel under 248.5 passing yards on Wednesday afternoon out at the Rose Bowl in one of the other quarterfinal games. So just make sure you're using Prize Picks, $50, or put $5 in, get $50 instantly using the promo code SoonerScoop. Unfortunately, the way that the game went, and with the way that Oklahoma lost the game, the 21-20 loss, obviously going for two there in the fourth quarter, probably didn't get enough due. I thought Michael Hawkins played really, really well on Friday afternoon. You look at his numbers, 28 of 43, 247, 2 touchdowns, had the one fumble, did rush the ball for 75 yards as well on 17 attempts for a net of 61. Obviously, tough situation with no wide receivers. You had the 7 drops in the game, Josh, but offensively, it was a pretty good start. Got the 14 points there in the first half. What'd you think just overall? And then obviously Ben Arbuckle on the sidelines for the first time this season.
Guys, there's a big part of me that thinks if Oklahoma converts that first fourth down attempt and Xavier Robinson gets it, I think they go in, score, and that game might just be over at that point. Like that's
Navy's not fit to come back from 17-0 or 21-0.
And guys, we've been tough on Venables and some of his in-game decisions. I don't have a problem with any of the fourth downs they went for. I don't have a problem with the going for 2. I thought that was the smart play. Needing 3 yards, you got a little momentum. It's the first time you've had the ball all day. I liked what they did. I thought there were some good things. Now, I don't love the play calls that Oklahoma got in some of those situations, but I liked the decisions themselves. Like, I liked going for it. I liked being aggressive. I was all for all of that. What they did with personnel, Xavier Robinson being apparently the third back, I don't have an answer for that. I don't have a good reason for why that's the case or how that could possibly happen. We're on YouTube. I'm going to try not to cuss about it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I thought there were positives. Michael Hawkins, guys, like I think in my grade in the report card, I had him like a 77 coming out of the game, especially after that drive. And then I went back and watched. I was like, guys, this is, like, I mean, I hate to, like, not that it matters. It's all, just arbitrary numbers. But I thought he was more like in the 80s. He played pretty well. And if you put some of those drops on him, like, drops are going to happen. But if you take out a couple of them and make those catches, guys, he's pushing 350 yards and really had a big, big day.
And the thing with him too, Josh, that I noticed, he just seemed more comfortable, one, and you wonder how much of that is just working with Ben Arbuckle. And you can see Ben here, being really energetic and just kind of, and watching him on the sideline, he was talking to Michael and I just wonder.
He certainly didn't act like a guy that has
just
been
got
here
hired
for a month.
Yeah.
I did think that was kind of notable.
And that to me is like, you take a guy, obviously John Mateer's the guy next year for Oklahoma, but you put, Michael Hawkins in this system and also with some actual like coaching and teaching from a quarterback's coach, whether that's Arbuckle and, the new guy, what's his last name? Kazuski. So I can't remember how.
I can't pronounce
Arbuckle
it. Yes.
told me how to pronounce it, but I can't remember. But, get some actual coaching from a quarterback's coach. I think his potential is really high. Like, this is a guy that obviously super dynamic, running the ball. I think his throwing motion is a little funky, but like is pretty accurate. Like through that pass to Zion Kearney there that we just saw. I mean, that's not only is it a tough play to reverse field like he did and escape, but then to throw it on the run, on the money. I mean, that's a heck of a play.
He had another one of those later on in the game that I thought, if Zion Kearney can bring it down, it hit him right in the hands. And I think Reagan's had a couple of those
he
as
did.
well.
The flea flicker.
I mean, I thought they were great throws. You got to be able to catch the ball. We talked about the, obviously Michael Hawkins and the delivery of the football. I thought Zion Kearney made a play, which, I do think when you're talking about some of these wide receivers and you look at what Oklahoma has or hasn't done in the portal with, I think probably the focus on the wide receiver position, I do think that like Zion Kearney is somebody that certainly haven't given up on when you're talking about moving into your sophomore season.
I couldn't agree more. You guys know I was a huge fan of him as a recruit, and he's one of those guys, one of the few guys that we've talked about. He is a big-bodied guy, big, sturdy, 6'1", 205, 210, big, just a big-bodied guy that can get into these corners and kind of get aggressive, push them around a little bit. Between him and Ivan Carrion, I was like, okay, you have something to build off with this freshman class of receivers with them going out with a strong bowl performance like that where, guys, I said it in the Monday Morning Idiot. You go back and watch that Gavin Sawchuk run, the touchdown run on the opening drive. I think that's the best blocked play from wide receivers to offensive linemen to tight end I've seen all year from Oklahoma. And Ivan Carrion just buries the corner, just humiliates the kid. And Sawchuk walks into the end zone. So I think there was a lot to build on. Obviously, the Zion Kearney drop, that's brutal.
Yeah.
It's a play he's got to make. But at the same time, if Hawkins sees him a second earlier, he's just sprinting down the sideline wide open. Like, I think that was some of it. He had to come back to the ball a little bit. Again, it's a play he's got to make. But there was an opportunity for even more there. So I think there are some really positive things to build on. And again, like you said, Michael Hawkins is incredibly unlikely to be the quarterback next year. But he has something to grow in, something to have some confidence in. And at the same time, John Mateer can look at some of these receivers and say, okay, I can work with these guys. I can make some stuff happen here.
Josh, what'd you think of the offensive line play in the game? I thought they definitely came out in the first couple drives, performed really well. Then the run game kind of disappeared, and I don't know how much of that is the offensive line's fault versus, it felt like Gavin Sawchuk definitely, didn't have the start that he obviously had. And then you have this holding call here that we're playing here with
just
Wee-Woo.
Brutal, man.
I mean, and it's just bad technique, on Wee-Woo's fault.
He's sloppy with his feet.
But what do you think of the O-line, Josh?
Guys, I think the things that we think we know heading into 2025, I feel more convicted about. And I will say, talking to the fans on the board on, Friday night, Saturday night, it was very much oh man, that offensive line performance was really bad. I'm as down about the future of that offensive line as I really have been all year. But after going back and watching it this morning, I thought Logan Howland played pretty well. I thought Heath Ozida played pretty well. I thought Troy Everett played really well. Like I thought I saw a lot that I liked from him. Fabechi Nwiwu, I feel like we saw the same stuff we've seen all year. Spencer Brown is Spencer Brown, and Michael Tarquin wasn't himself.
Yeah.
I thought the right side of the line repeatedly hurt that team. Now, what I will say of Ozida, Howland, and Everett, they need to basically be living on peanut butter and jellies, like wake up in the middle of the night, eat 3 of them, and then spend an extra hour working with Jerry Schmidt every day. If they are now getting to the point where they are where they're supposed to be. They're making the blocks they're supposed to make. They're not always getting the push they need to get. They're not driving guys off the ball as consistently as you want to see them. But if they can get bigger and stronger, really, really have a great offseason in the weight room, I think that can be a good trio. And then you've got to figure out what's on the right side, whether it's Fabechi improving, maybe changing his body a little bit in the offseason, kind of in a different way. If it's Eddie Pierre-Louis, kind of doing the same thing as I'm talking about with those 3 guys, where he puts on 15, 20 good pounds and is a lot bigger and stronger and can maybe come take that right guard job. And then at right tackle, whether it's back Linko, whether it's Simmons, whether it's Jake Taylor returning, whatever it may be, you've got to find some answers on the right side of that line. But I came away from the idiot doing the review this morning feeling a lot better about the 3 guys that I think we all expect to be kind of no doubt starters on week 1 for Oklahoma going forward next year.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Josh. I thought that, and again, we saw it week to week over the back half of the season. Logan Howland's just, I feel like he's gotten better every week. And he's one of those guys that they've had a lot of, faith in from the start in terms of what he could potentially be. Heath Ozida, same thing. I feel like he's gotten better. Troy Everett, that's your center. Like I feel like he. And really, the offensive line play started to get better when he got into the lineup this season. So you feel good about it. And then, look, I think the right side, you're looking at, I think Eddie Pierre-Louis deserves a chance to compete for that job with Wiwu. And then at right tackle, I think it's going to maybe be one of those transfers. Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor have not transferred either. So maybe one of those guys can either play right guard or right tackle, or maybe you still like Sexton at left guard. I don't know. I don't want to be a sunshine pumper here because I know there's a lot of bad vibes in Norman. I do feel good about the offensive line, somewhat good, at least of the potential of what it could be next year versus what they were facing this year in terms of having to replace all 5 guys. You had to bring in a ton of portal guys who just honestly weren't very good, average at best. And then I'm feeling kind of good about the defensive line on the other side. So when you talk about all the bad vibes in Norman, I feel like they're doing all right in the trenches right now. They at least should be better next year in the trenches.
No doubt about it.
I know. Again, I don't want to sit here and tell you OU's going to win a lot of football games next year. I don't believe that's going to happen. But when you talk about the returning production, it's not deniable of the production that they're returning in the trenches.
Absolutely. Kerry, I don't know what you're talking about in our ears. Oh, yeah.
No.
We're not there yet. I don't think we're talking about anybody going to the playoffs quite yet. But the 2-point conversion, Josh, I didn't have a problem with it. I agree with you. I do think, though, like in the game, it's hard to explain. I thought it was the right call to go for 2. I think it's a much bigger conversation in terms of, did you not think that you could beat Navy in overtime? Is that what the issue is? Like, I don't know how to separate those two.
Maybe Brent just wanted to go home.
For me, guys, I think it comes down to when you get into those situations, when you have to go 25 and in, that plays the Navy pretty well. Like that's their kind of game where they don't have to put together a 14-play drive and go down the field against a really good Oklahoma defense. They've got to get 2 first downs, and then, okay, we're playing, and we've got all this motion, all this movement. If you're misaligned one time, we're going to make you pay. Like that is kind of the thing where Oklahoma is a more talented team, obviously. They're also younger. They have a quarterback who's still learning. They can throw some stuff at him that, is frankly, it's going to confuse any freshman quarterback. That's not an indictment of Michael Hawkins. I I like the decision from the idea of this is what we want to do. Now, that's the play call. Like, I would have loved to seen something, and you can tell, guys, and I broke it down in the idiot. You can tell Navy thought they were, when they lined it up on the left hash, Navy thought they were going to boot him hard right, because they bring pressure immediately in his face to his right. They're trying to keep him in the pocket, trying to keep him from doing that. And I would have loved to have seen some kind of flood action where you have Ivan carry on running the back line, at the end zone, something where you sneak Zion Ragans to the near corner. Like, I would love to have seen something like that. I don't love the play they went with. I love the decision because, again, I think especially let's say you do score and it's all even after after two overtimes, then you get into 2-point conversions.
Yeah.
Man, playing that game against Navy, that's a really tough sell. That's probably the last team in the country you want to play 2-point bonanza with.
Yeah, I kind of explained. I felt like they could have won in overtime just because Navy didn't have a kicker, really.
Sure.
Had already missed a 38-yarder, so I felt like OU could maybe win. But at the same time, OU hadn't really moved the ball offensively, and you're feeling good. You're riding the momentum. I would have liked them to give him some sort of run option there in terms of just let him get out of the pocket. And because I said in the press box, I was like, the best play call right now is let Michael Hawkins just scramble around for 3 yards. Like, that would have been, and it just felt like they were like, well, let's just sit in the pocket and draw something up. And it seemed like the receivers ran into each other. It was a perfect way to end the year. Just a bad play call, and it didn't seem like it was executed the right way either. It just kind of encapsulated the entire season.
And on top of all that, it's like, well, what a drive that was to go, have that opportunity.
But that's what OU was all
conversion.
season. That was OU.
There's a lot of good, and then it was like, oh shit.
They suck you back in. That's like they suck you back in. They're like, oh, maybe they've got it figured out, and then they fumble with a minute left and Missouri scoops and scores, or they're up at halftime against Ole Miss and then they have to get their ass kicked in the second half, or they're up 14-0 against Navy and then they come storming all the way back to tie the game up and then they don't get the 2-point conversion. Like, that's OU football in 2024.
Josh, what did you think of the conversation that we had on the Eskridge Lexus post-game show, just in terms of, and George, you were the one that brought it up on the instant reaction, and then we discussed it on the program on the Eskridge Lexus with Carrie. Is this just a program right now that doesn't know how to win? It seems like when they are in spots where you can really take hold of a game or pull away with a game, like we talked about in the first half, or go win the game, they just don't know how to get over that hump. And that's frustrating.
I think you almost have to say it, and it's always one of those conversations where, like, oh, the players don't know how. I see plenty of mistakes that aren't the players. Like, I see stuff that I can't say, oh, that's a player error. Like the time – George, you and I and Carrie can yell into your headphones. The timeout management is going to be the end of me. It's just going to kill me. It's the first half. I realize they're not as valuable as second half timeouts, but you can't, you still need them. And don't tell me on that last drive they couldn't have been useful when Taylor Tatum's running around the middle of the field, or Xavier Robinson is running around the middle of the field and goes down and there's no time left on the clock and OU's and Navy's half of the field. That could have been used. Like, that could have been a useful timeout, and they're doing it off an incomplete pass. The clock's not running. It's just stuff like that where you're like, I don't know what they're doing. But again, I don't want to make it all about the coaches. There's plenty of player mistakes too that you're just like, why are you doing the Febechi Nwiwu? That guy's run that block 100 times in games this year. The Navy guy didn't do anything crazy. He just took a poor angle and got his feet out of alignment. And all you've got to do is stand in his way for a second. Michael Hawkins is gone. Like, you didn't have to do anything special there. And it just, it's an old and kind of a 100% an old guy thing. But OU didn't have any toes left. Like, they've shot themselves in the foot so many damn times that you're just like, what else can they do? Again, the way they lost this one, you're like, oh, okay, they sucked, like George said, they sucked everybody back in, thought they had a chance, and then they find a way to run a ridiculous play and don't block Navy's best pass rusher. Sure, that's a new way to lose. They haven't done that before. Let's try that one on.
We've seen it all.
It's been a great year.
We've seen it all this year, boys. I think that's probably the safest and easiest and most unpassionate way to say it, because I think we had a pretty passionate discussion about it on the Unofficial 40 today. You can check that out right here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. And that's going to do it. A Game Day Rewind, wrapping up an Oklahoma season that finishes 6-7, and certainly a number of questions now going into the offseason in which, everybody's coaching for their job next year. I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to say it. It's everyone's ass is on the line. From Brent Venables, I would even say people in the admin, your ass is on the line, and they have got to figure it out. I think we all sit here probably thinking they're not going to be able to fix it next year. But
it's just right now in the moment, it's very, very hard to find any positive.
Yeah,
right
check
now.
back in a few months and maybe we'll talk ourselves into it.
Maybe check back in 30 minutes. Who knows? I feel like that's the way this thing goes these days with the Oklahoma football program. Big week ahead for the OU men's basketball team. Headed
And
down
women's.
to Tuscaloosa, as well as the women.
Top
Big
10.
game in Norman at the Lloyd Noble
top
Center
10
on
game.
Thursday night against Texas. So we watched how both of those games finished last year for Jenny Baranchek and crew, and they finish out the I guess non-conference portion of the season 12-1, 25-1 when you combine that with a 13-0 men. So hoops school, and we will soon be catching up with Bob Przybylo to talk about all the happenings over at the Lloyd Noble Center. Josh, you're more than welcome to talk about all the basketball happenings here over the next 3 months en route to Oklahoma, and both teams, the men and women, going to the Final Four respectively. So you're more than welcome to come. I guess that's all I'm going to say.
It's hoop season, Eddie. I don't know why there's this impression I haven't been always big on OU basketball, but clearly I'm in now. So let's go.
That's fake news media, and I'm sure that George will write about it. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. He's Josh McQuistion. We will talk to you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. See you next time.